Welcome to Rick on Life, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Media Project. I'm your host, Rick Amitin, and this is where I like to talk about things that are affecting our daily lives. Today, we're going to be talking about parenting with Julian Caldwell. Julian Caldwell founded Get Connect Dad with one simple goal: to improve the connection between parents and their kids. Julian works a day job and spends his evening after his family retires continuing to build this program. Because he travels a great deal for his day job, he is intensely focused on trying to find better ways for fathers and mothers who work long hours, different hours, or unusual hours to be engaged with their kids. Julian, welcome to Rick on Life.
Hey, thanks, Rick, so much for the invitation. I love what you're doing. Pretty excited.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's really good to be with you. Let's start. Let's start with you telling us about your childhood.
Sure.
And what was your experience with your parents growing up?
So I had a great experience. I look back and I don't think I realized that until I started, of course, had my first daughter. I've got a 24-year-old daughter, and then I've got two adopted boys who are 6 and 4. And I look back now and think about the things that my mom and dad thought were important for me. And I value those today more than I did when I was, 13 and 16 and even probably 25. But very much I was the oldest of 4 kids. We were very musical, engaged. We had a band, which is hilarious. That we were, let's see, from 10 years old till 20, we had a family band. So that kind of gave us it kind of brought me out of my shell, for lack of a better word. So. Yeah.
Well, that's great. So many times we hear the stories of people who had tough childhoods.
Yeah.
And difficult childhoods. It's refreshing, to hear somebody talk about their childhood in a favorable light. It was a good experience. They got out of it without being too maimed. And so that's a good thing. My story, of course, was much different.
Yes.
But I'm very thankful for yours.
Thanks, Rick.
The name of your program is Get Connect Dad.
Yep.
And it sounds almost like it's for dads only.
Yeah.
But tell us about how you got your name and what it represents.
That's a great question. So about 10 years ago, I lost custody of my daughter. I had joint custody for basically 11 years with my ex-wife. And in the state of Nebraska, 92% of the time, the fathers lose custody, regardless of condition. And went to court and spent a few $1,000s and found out that it wouldn't have mattered if I was the Pope himself. I wasn't going to get custody of my daughter. And in a moment of just sheer desperation and frustration and just sadness, it was the day that I got the announcement that the judge had ruled in the favor of my ex-wife, and she was going to be moving away, which was even worse. And Rick, the only explanation I've got is that God put this name in my head, because it just came, Get Connect Dad. It was like this, as clear as light, just like in front of me, Get Connect Dad. And that evening, I'm talking to my daughter, and I said to her, sometime, someday, somehow, I'm going to use this as a way for that name or that call to bring parents and their kids closer together. And I paid for that domain for, 10 years, actually about 8 years with no activity. It was just, I paid for it. I knew I wanted it. If you say it fast, it's Get Connected, right? So if you say it quickly, it just sounds like Get Connected.
Right.
And it started really just, as my way to kind of document I call them like the bumper rails for my boys. So I'm a 48-year-old father, so this is round 2 for me. And I was concerned about giving them sort of some guideposts that just in case I pass away before they're of age, that they have kind of a perspective of these are the things that were important to dad. And I'm not a fatalist. I don't think I'm going to pass away, but you just
Right.
never know, right? You plan. And I had been collecting a list of traits from people and friends that I had I kind of admired. So I look like be humble, be friendly, be outgoing. So I had like 40 some odd traits of these connected, or these traits, and I thought, well, I'm going to figure out a few more and just write on them and give them to my sons as a gift. Some fathers from all over the world literally started writing and says, I want to write with you. And then mothers started. So it's just been an incredibly interesting change. It happened just organically. I wasn't planning it.
Well, if this is too personal, just let me know and we'll move
Yeah.
on. But I mean, I'm sure everybody would want to know how things are today with you and your daughter.
Yeah.
That have a good.
No, not good. So I think the most effective way to describe it would be parent alienation. The first couple of years is okay, and then I haven't spoken with her since high school graduation. Not by my choosing. I've reached out and emailed and called and visited and everything you could possibly do, but she's just not ready to I guess give me a chance to to be dad again. And I called this. I told the judge that this was going to be the ramification of his decision was going to be that she would be basically, kind of cut off from our family. And so none of my family has a relationship with her right now. But I pray daily, that if it's his will that this is to be, that she'll come back and I'll be waiting with open arms. So it's tough.
Man, it is that's heartbreaking to hear. I was hoping, that it would have a good ring to, to what became of it. But we're
Yeah.
certainly going to hope with you that, that the right opportunities will come about and that you'll be able to reconnect, on
Thanks.
a much higher level. There are so many parents who have these stories to tell, and it's heartbreaking,
Yep.
and it's always the kids that suffer, at the deepest levels when these kinds of things happen, these breakups take place. And sometimes, you find the healing and it's a wonderful outcome. And other times it's a long and painful, journey that so many parents, especially fathers, have to navigate. And so I'm sure with all the work that you're doing, that just helps people appreciate even more that you didn't let it destroy you, but you actually turn that pain into some purpose and try to address it, to help other fathers who may be facing those similar situations. So hats off to you there, man, really.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope that, at some point, I hope that some of the fathers and mothers that I've worked with and have participated that may have changed the way their families interact and get engaged. And at some point, my boys love it. They every once in a while do a Get Connect Dad show, and my boys are the stars. They're 6 and 4, and it's always chaos, but it's still certainly cute. I do believe that in time, all kids typically return home unless there's a significant issue, or she's welcome at any time of the day, any hour of the day. She can come back when she's ready. So it's been tough.
Well, let's hope that happens soon.
Right.
For your sake and hers.
Thanks, Rick.
So we hit on this probably a little bit, but now that you've had time to work with your program, beyond the initial inspiration, I'm sure there are things that have happened and developed in your interaction with other parents that's provided fresh or even stronger inspiration for the work that you're doing. Talk to us a little bit about that inspiration.
Yeah, great question. I think probably the most telling moment in the last year and a half, 2 years, was as I was going to do a radio show for Father's Day 2 years ago. And the question was going to be asked, what are you concerned about as a father? And I kind of threw that question out to, at that time, a really small group of fathers, but I had like 15, 20 countries. And, I'm worried about college for my boys. Is college going to be even required when they're older? Are they going to get bullied in school? And, those are kind of first world kind of concerns for a father or a mother. And then
Sure.
the father from Nigeria said, I hope my child doesn't get kidnapped and sent into sexual slavery.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I don't have any real problems. At the end of the day, not that mine are less important, but I don't worry about that where I live. I'm blessed. Those of us in the States and in more civilized communities don't worry about that. But that was kind of like an eye opener of actually, there's actually some serious issues around the world to engage in, or to be concerned about. And the other thing I would probably highlight was the realization that it doesn't take a super dad or super mom to make an impact. And the concept of, like, if you don't spend 5 hours a night playing Legos on the floor with your child, you're a horrible parent, and you should do like I do. Because if you go look at the magazines, the dads are all wearing aprons, and they're doing all the work at home. Mom's doing working, and she's doing the kids, and the kids are like, that's the main focus. No, don't get me wrong, they're important, but you have to, just a little bit of time, and 15 to 30 minutes a day with each of your children does a lot to give them a feeling of belonging. And that's what we learned greatly. And we've been doing that since the beginning. My wife's better than I am because I was traveling a lot. But as of late, I've had more time to do that. So I've made a lot of Lego stuff in the last few months. So.
Yeah, when I was doing some research for my book, I realized that fatherlessness is pandemic, and it's global.
Yep.
It's a worldwide crisis. We tend to think here, what's immediately around us and how we're affected immediately in our country, but it really is a worldwide situation. And in so many of these countries, fathers face issues like you're referring to that just aren't the everyday norm for us, but it's everyday norm for them. And it really gives you a sense of empathy and compassion for, what's going on, all over the world. And
Yes.
Man, it's so great that that your reach is that broad, and that you can connect, and be supportive to people who are living in much different circumstances than we are here.
Yeah, it's been a blessing. I didn't expected my mother and maybe my wife, if I paid her to read what I was writing. Mom would because she loves me. My wife would because I would, I guess I would probably have to pay her. But it turned into where it's actually growing. It's grew really quickly. Much of the writing is kind of now in maintenance mode, in the sense we're really focusing on the course. It's a free course on being more connected to your family. So it's a 5-week email course, and it's really about just trying to take what we've learned in the last 2 years of all the correspondence and writing, and giving parents a simple way to make a connection, improve communication, engage their children in a different way. And that's kind of really the focus right now, is figuring out that component. And there's another area that we're kind of moving into, which is working with, my wife does some great work with a local prison, and we're working on trying to figure out how that transition for fathers and mothers who have been incarcerated, going back into the house, how do we break the cycle? And we do that in our world, we think, by connecting them to men and women who are good role models, and will take that phone call at 2:00 in the morning, right? Because they love that person and they want them
Sure.
to succeed. So we're not sure what we're going to be when we grow up, but it's been a fun journey so far.
Yeah, well, that's another great, great area of need. And I love that. I love it when people want to do something,
Yeah.
to make things better. And so it's really great.
My wife does a dog therapy. We have a rare dog, an otter hound, and so she goes every Thursday and spends 3 to 4 hours in the prison doing, walking around, and Tuck's about 130 pounds. He's a big dog, so he's kind of
Wow.
indestructible in that space. But she's, she comes home with these great stories of what do I do when I get out of here? This is what I know, or I don't want to be here in 8 weeks. And she sees recidivism, just like she'll see them leave, and then 4 months later, they're back again. And she's like, what's going on? So she and I are both trying to figure out what's the right, what resources are there and what could we add in that space. So who knows? We'll just see. It's just where our hearts are being tugged in that direction right now. So.
Yeah, when the kid loses a parent or dad, especially to incarceration, the need that they have from their father doesn't go away.
No.
They still need it.
Nope,
And the
exactly.
father can be very wrapped up in survival mode and dealing with, all of the elements of being incarcerated, and may think of their children and may not even know how, from the place that they're in, to still touch their kids' lives. And how do they recover from whatever it was that they did,
Yeah.
to put themselves in that situation. And so, whenever I'm working with dads, I'm always trying to remind them of the questions that are in the minds of kids. And these questions are profound. And oftentimes we take them for granted, but, they want to know how dad feels about them and thinks about them and their future. And so when we can steer dads into helping them realize that their role is to help answer those questions.
Yep.
For their kids, and they may not have them answered in their own lives. Maybe they didn't get it.
Yep.
And it is a cycle, and they're perpetuating some dysfunction, brokenness from their own childhood. So we may have to address that with them, help them with their own sense of identity, and then try to tie that back into the importance of the role that they play in their kids' lives. It's a tough challenge, when you're dealing with men who are broken.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah. So interesting enough, like 60% of our readers or more are actually moms, which surprised me when I did the demographics. But sadly, most of the dad books are bought by moms for dad. They're given at Father's Day, and or in whatever reason, sometimes tune up your abilities, dad. So it's really, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, as much as I've done research and asked questions and interviewed, I still find myself kind of going back to the knee-jerk reactions that I learned. I mean, my mom and dad were great people, but they came from a different world, a different time. And
right.
So I try to, my wife is extremely good. She's got a master's in educational psychology. So I think every day is kind of like a unpaid session for me. But the reality is that it's important for moms and dads to, kind of look at what, at least we found that we've got moms and dads looking at what the stories that people have told are nice ways for them to kind of engage in conversations around some of our traits.
Yeah, absolutely. I've come across so many aspects of this in my research and in my digging for trying to address these issues and understand the root causes of these issues and how to best apply some solutions to it. One pediatrician has been very informative to me. Her name is Dr. Meg Meeker.
Yeah.
And she's got some YouTube stuff out there, and she really addresses the subject of fathers in the lives of their kids and how important it is for the development of well-balanced kids. And man, she doesn't pull any punches about how important this really is. And men have been displaced. There's no question about it over the last 25, 30 years.
Yeah, right.
And our legal system has taken a horrible position where fathers are concerned. The good news, I think, is that things are changing and that things are moving back to an understanding of, men and women both parent differently. Mothers and fathers parent differently, but both of those aspects are critical in the well-being of children. And so when the father is just removed, he's not as disposable as some might have previously thought. Yeah. It's an important role, and it needs to be understood and respected for what it does, in the lives of kids. when someone visits getconnectdad.com and they're on your site,
Yeah.
give us a little bit of the inner workings. I know you've got a blog. I know you have a newsletter. You've got the site. You mentioned the course that you have going on for parents. Tell us a little bit, though, about all the inner workings of
Sure.
what's behind Get Connect Dad.
Right. So we collected about 700 stories. I kind of call it an anthology on parenthood. So parents wrote on the traits. So each week when we rolled a trait out a week, and we had parents from all over writing. So a parent from the UK would write their perspective. A parent from the US, a parent from Mexico would write their response. So when you go in, there's, of course, you can sign up for our free course, and there's no upsell to another course. It's just a course that we're doing. This is my wife's and my passion. And then you can actually then look at, you can go and look, I want some issues, I want some help around being humble. So you can go actually click the traits, and it gives you be humble. And then from that gives you an entire list of stories from men and women about what they've done with their kids about teaching humility. So that's kind of the format. It's really just written around that kind of a structure. So be enthusiastic. So I want to know about being enthusiastic or being optimistic. So you click that, and here's all the stories around that topic. We've contemplated putting into a book for, like an ebook that people could download. But what we found really is that the course is, we've gotten great feedback on the 5 weeks, because it's not a get rich quick. It's a get connected to your kids over time kind of course. And we put a lot of time and energy into that content. And then we've got the other weeks kind of built out. We haven't launched that yet. I'm working through what the right format is. This is like a course, like a class. But I don't think, I'm trying to decide, it has to be bite-sized pieces, right? We're all busy parents, so who can sit down and spend 45 minutes a week consuming a course? But if I could give them small little bits of information throughout the week, or a tip every other day, or a tip on demand, we're not sure how that format, but we've got the content for all of them built out as a reading. So
well, man, it sounds great, but I want to go back to what you were talking about, and these traits that they can go to and look up.
Yeah.
Respect, honor, loyalty, whatever it might be, and then to open that up and then have an abundance of experience from all around the world, and how moms and dads have addressed these issues, and then they're sharing that information.
Yep.
To me, that is incredible. What a tremendous resource that is for people who are looking to connect, and when they're facing some challenging situation and they really don't know what to do.
Yeah.
To be able to go to a resource like that, open it up, read how other people addressed it,
Yep.
learn a little bit about what worked and didn't work, and
that's right.
And man, that is just a phenomenal thing. And man, I'm very excited to know the depth of.
Thank you.
Of that.
It's probably the second smartest thing I've done in my life, which was, the first one was, of course, marrying my wife. But I found that it felt driven to do that. It felt like I started with my kids as the focus, but it really quickly turned to, listen, we're reaching moms and dads in different places in the world, and how incredible is that to have that story be a part of that, have this, in general, the story be a part of it. I have their stories be a part of that growth. So it's been exciting, very exciting.
Yeah. And so that's the program that you call the 52 character trait. So
Yep.
That's pretty much finished. Pretty much.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. We publish probably a couple articles a week, depending upon writers, and but I'm more selective now. Not so that I wasn't then, but for me to add to the anthology, it's got to make sense for the writings, and I'm focusing my energy more on the what's next, right? Because it was 45 hours a week for a year and a half, 2 years of writing and editing. I edited every single document, and that's about what's next. Yeah.
When you were doing that particular part of your program and collecting up the experiences around these 52 traits that you want to get in the kids, what would you say was the most valuable lesson that you learned in that arena?
So everyone doesn't write well. No, just joking. Um, I edited a lot, so I learned a whole lot more about my own capabilities to edit and read and write. So that was great. I'm joking for all the writers, everyone. I took lots of articles that were from the heart, and then tuned them up and made them more web friendly or editor friendly.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing I learned is there are a lot of men and women who want to do the right thing and go out of their way to be extra mindful of their role as a parent. And that was for me refreshing, because in today's society, sadly, we hear about those who don't care. And we don't hear a lot about, it's not really good news to tell them that most of the fathers that I know are engaged with their kids. And most of the moms I know are engaged with their kids. And
Yeah.
how we reach those that aren't is the challenge, right? I always joke that bloggers are the worst preachers because they're preaching to their choir, right? What dad who's in trouble wants to read a parenting blog, right? That's dumb. I would never sign up if I don't care about my kids. Why would I want to read about being a better parent? So for me, it's about how do I surround dads who don't get it with dads who do get it, and make them more of a role model, so they can say this is not tough stuff. It's challenging because they're little human beings, but it's certainly nice to see there's a lot of men and women who care a great deal about what they're doing, and they take their role very seriously.
As you interact with people from different parts of the world, and you've got all these variations in cultures and no doubt ideas and belief systems and all of that, but have you found that parents generally share the same basic concerns?
Yeah, they all have trouble getting their kids to bed.
Yeah.
Everyone I've ever talked to has some kind of issue. My wife would not, because she did it perfectly, and then I ruined it. But there's some core ones. So one is that kids always want more time, right? So they'll take gifts if you're giving them gifts because they kind of get used to it. But at the end of the day, they want more time with mom and dad, both of them. That's one thing. The second thing is parents are always worried. There's no society no parent that I talk to in any of the places I've talked to that, oh, this is all easy, it's all good, it's all gonna work out. So parents worry an excessive amount for the success of their kids, which is great. I think the third thing is that they're always worried about the outcome, right? Parents are concerned about what they're doing today, because what you're investing today affects 6, 9, 10, 15 years from now. And
Right.
You don't really have insight into that unless you've had an older child. So I've got an older child, so I had her through 15, so got a good experience with her in that space. But you're doing things today which might not make sense, but you're really setting up the child for a future success. So
Yeah, I pretty much knew the answer to that, but I wanted to hear what you had to say when it comes to people just across the wide spectrum of the world.
Yeah.
That, as parents, there are these basic concerns, that we have. And I think it helps, again, to have a resource like you're providing so that people can connect all over the world and realize, okay, we may be addressing certain issues here a certain way that may be a little bit different where they are, but it just gives them an insight to help be connected to something much larger than themselves. So you don't have to become so narrow in your feeling like I'm isolated. I've got these concerns that maybe nobody else has.
Yep.
And then you realize, no, everybody who's parenting kids have across the board some very common issues, that they're facing and confronting.
Absolutely.
One of the things here, I think, is the technology is having such an impact now on our kids. And where in one sense it's supposed to be connecting us to the larger world, in another sense the relationships are so superficial that they feel even more isolated now. And there's a rise of depression among kids and young people, and even the terrible part of it where suicide comes into play. And so I think that the technology can be wonderful when it's managed, and it can be very detrimental, if it goes unchecked and it's out of hand. And I think that is something that's probably being addressed all across the world, with parents and kids. But I know in this country especially, we're having a huge problem now with what technology is actually doing to our kids and the addictions that it's creating.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I call it crack cocaine for kids.
Yeah.
My boys, if I take an iPad out, it's like that's all they want to talk about for the rest of the day. iPad, 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 iPad. And we're very diligent about screen time in general. And there's a book called Bringing Up Geeks, which I read a long time ago. It's a great book. I'm sorry, I can't think of the author off the top of my head. She's a brilliant, brilliant doctor, but it's about limiting that time. And I traveled a lot of my career, and I'd look in the airports, and families would be sitting together in the same area, all on a phone.
Yeah.
And I just looked at them, and someone would walk up and just slap them silly, and like, dude, what's going on? Talk to your child, talk to your mom, talk to your dad. But I get it. I understand that it's an easy way to, and I consider it like an easy babysitter, right? So they can get consumed and disappear quickly, and they're quiet. But it's such an important thing not to do that. So.
Well, the truth of it is, though, a lot of the adults are actually addicted themselves, and they don't realize. They don't realize what's going on. And, I've seen those pictures countless times. I've experienced it in real life. I've seen it, in news clips and other articles. And it's just amazing when you realize that here these families are, everybody's isolated, sitting next to each other. There's just no connection, and it's a big thing. So you have a good social media presence. You've got a Facebook page for your group. You're on Twitter. You're on LinkedIn. I think you're on Instagram.
I am.
Tell us kind of the inner workings of the different ways that people can interact with you on these different social media platforms.
Great question. Thanks, Rick. So the best place is probably right now it's Facebook. The interaction is good. We have a group, and I actually partner with a lady named Julie Ford called Parenting Partnerships. And that's a group where men and women, moms and dads, are working together to try to cover topics that are topical for the time of the year. And there's great interactions in that space. But actually, I respond to all the social media direct messages, from anyone, because for me, it's personal. I really find that to be part of my mission. In some ways, I consider it a ministry, but not I'm not going to hit you with God right away. That's not my style, but it's part of who I am, right? So, so Facebook is great. Twitter's great. I'm always on Twitter, typically at night it's getting a little bit less because there's a lot of spam on Twitter now. It's kind of painful. And anyone can always email me at julian@getconnectdad.com, and I respond to every one of those emails. And no matter if it's 50 or 1,000, I think it's important to keep connected. So.
Yeah, great. We've already talked about your most valuable lesson. Any other aha moment that you've had, in putting this program together and working with so many different people?
Yeah, I think for the aha moment for me was that I realized that I certainly had tons of room to grow. I look back on the way I parented as a young adult compared to now. I get the luxury of being the older adult looking back at myself and going, no, I could have been easier on that or less or more difficult on that. But that's probably the biggest aha for me personally. And the other part is that, that men and women share many common issues in and around parenting. So although you might think that this is a mom's issue or a dad's issue, at the end of the day, both of them typically have very similar concerns. And once you actually start to talk about it, they sit down and talk about it, it ends up being pretty clear that they're on the same page more often than they're not. So.
Yeah, absolutely. What's next for you guys? What's the next big project?
Yeah, I think we're really exploring the prison, engaging in that space. The course I think will expand, and then I'm looking at a couple of adventures with a couple of educators to engage in the schools differently. So I take on the parents at home, and the schools take on the kids at school, and then synchronize the conversations in and around characters. So, who knows?
Well, man, look, I really am rooting for your success. You're doing work that I'm passionate about and believe in, and I've got a soft spot in my heart for kids and fathers. You
Thanks,
know,
Rick.
no doubt about that. So I wish you all the success. And I got to tell you, from a personal standpoint, I always get very encouraged and very inspired when I see people working to make things better. You know, there's lots of people who just want to tell you the bad and complain about stuff and do
True.
absolutely nothing
Yeah.
to address the issues, to offer any solutions or come up with any strategies for improvement. So whenever I see someone like yourself who's saying, you know, I've got my own heartbreak, I've got my own hardship, I've got my own humanity, I'm not a perfect person, but there's something here I think I can do.
Yeah.
And then when you give yourself to that and you're trying your best, you know, to make a difference, very inspiring to me personally, Julian. And so
Thanks, Rick.
I'm really appreciative of, you know, of the work that you're doing. So thanks
Thank you,
for
brother.
being with us today, and thanks for sharing, you know, your work. And anything else you'd like to say before we
No, just
sign off?
I encourage everyone to go to getconnectdad.com and /join. It's a 5-week free course. It's one email a week, very easy, and it's not a I don't have an upsell at the end of it where I'm going to try to charge you for a course. This is really a kind of a passion of ours, so I'd love everyone to sign up and let me know how it's going. So
Great. Well, again,
thanks, Rick.
let me just reiterate that people can connect with Julian and Get Connect Dad at getconnectdad.com. So you could get there, and then when this show airs, there'll be also other links for the Facebook and the Twitter and the other links that he's currently involved in. So you can look for that.
Thanks, Rick.
As always, I want to say to everybody, thanks for being with us. It's always a pleasure to know that people are out there listening to what we're talking about, that it matters, that we're trying to do some good things here. And remember, whatever's going on in your life, just sprinkle a little love on it. I'm Rick Amitin, and I'll see you next time.